Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Ian's Display Accessories, the best figure stands for iconic Kenner Star Wars, Hasbro GIJoe, as well as modern Star Wars Black Series, Marvel Legends, and GIJoe Classified. As well as our friends at TGC Customs, one of the best 3D printing options available. Check them out if you're looking to fill the gaps on Masters of the Universe, GIJoe, Transformers. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Codename New to Vero 2. Hi, I'm your presenter, shabooru. Well, we're going to take a look at another GIJoe Classifieds offering. This one being a Walmart exclusive that came out around the same time as Big Ben. I kind of waited to do this video because it is actually an important video to me. And you may think, a 90s figure, a 90s character, as goofy as his appearance is, well, there's a lot of significance in this character, and I'm talking about the Range Viper. Now, there's been a plethora of bandwagon, sudden GIJoe fans since the Classifieds came out. Guys that have done nothing related to GIJoe from 2007 to 2018. But in order to cash in, they decide to look at GIJoe action figures to get your views and your likes or whatever. But they've all missed the point about this particular character because they don't know the mythos like you and I do. Now, this character has a very grim distinction, and he's in the same tier as the dreaded Saw Viper. That's right. So that's why I was kind of shocked. And then when you look at the figure again, it kind of gives you a new perception of the character, because he is a skull face and everything. And this being the end of October, I thought it was actually appropriate. Now, while there's some grim and seriousness, I want to present things in a light, fun way. So we're going to start off looking at his appearance in Deke. And then we're going to dive into issue 113, which is like, for a GIJoe fan, it is one of those tough issues because, like issue 109, it deals with the reality that war is not something fun. War is not something that should be glorified. It is terrible. And I think all of these people that have been looking at this figure has missed the point about this figure, that it is a reminder in a goofy package that war is a terrible, terrible thing. Now, we have veterans like Articulated Chad, Analog Toys, and me being an operative, analytics and intel, that know this. And we see war for what it is. We see all these, January 6th, pro-gun guys are all gung-ho, but it is not cool when people are shooting back at you. War is nothing. There's nothing good or glorifying or macho about war whatsoever. So with that, let's take a look at the Range Viper. So as I was preparing to look at the Range Viper, I couldn't help but notice how opposite this character's depiction is. And we're starting off with the Deke animated series. And, every Gen Xer has terrible things to say about the Deke animated series. And it is weird and terrible, but at the same time, remember, it was meant for kids under 10 years old. And I'm going to say it. I think something like Deke is desperately needed for today. In order for GIJoe to live past the Gen Xer, we need to attract a younger demographic. And something like Deke, just like a fan for any sports teams, you want to appeal to every type of age group, and fandom starts at a very young age. So it's good to do this in order to recruit new fans, diverse fans, and to show that GIJoe is important in today's world and has life lessons that today's kids can relate to. So the Range Viper's first appearance in an episode titled United We Stand Now, be it a small role, but still it is the character's first appearance. And this story focuses on Ambush and Pathfinder, teaching kids that they have to work together and be able to communicate in order to achieve objectives and goals. In this episode, Cobra Commander has this mind controlling gas and he uses it on Salvo here. And basically, because of this goof up, the leader, who is Captain Gridiron, not Duke or Hawk, but Captain Gridiron had the leadership role in the Deke series, places them on a house arrest. So, in order to redeem themselves, they dress up as nurses and sneak out of the hospital and find their way back to Cobra's base. Here we see the Range Viper on the left hand side. Basically, Cobra Commander, typical Cobra Commander, he holds the world hostage, demanding a crazy ransom. And once his toxin gets kind of flips on him, so he has to agree to release the antidote and orders the Range Viper to release the antidote in order to escape by the skin. So he ends up working with the GIJoe team in order to save his own skin. So it's good to see Cobra Commander still being Cobra Commander, even in lame ass Deke animated series. But again, the life lessons that's when you look at the Deke series, you know that it's for kids and it's all about teaching kids values and life lessons. And that's where I think something like the Deke series is so needed today, and that children can benefit from something like this and get their heads out of these iPads and tablets. And Emily, this is what you should be doing, sweetie. You need, as the director of marketing, you need to appeal to young kids as well as listen to your grassroots support for GIJoe. And in retrospective, the Deke series has its own crazy ass charm now that you look back. The Range Viper makes his first appearance in issue 113. Not since issue 109 did the grim reality of warfare is showcased to the reader. And again, credit Larry Hama for not sugarcoating it. War is terrible. War is the worst thing in the world. In this issue, just like issue 109, we see a collection of G.I. Joe's characters killed off, starting off with Battle Force 2000 and Sneak Peek as well, meet their end. In 109, it was the Saw Viper that killed a whole bunch of Joes, but in this case, it's the Range Viper that does in Sneak Peek. Previous Agreement is actually a very interesting story because it is based off some real life events that we are actually seeing today. Now, issue 113 has our Joes fully involved in the fictitious benzene unrest. Stalker, Sneak Peek, Dusty are pinned down, requesting backup from Hawk, who has the Sheik's only concern about his oil reserves in his ear nonstop. Now, I can say this. This reminds me of the Wahhabi royal Sunni family. Let me educate the listener with this. There is no such thing as a Muslim country, a Jewish country, or a Christian country. Get that out of your head. History has shown us all that these governments, from the European Middle Ages all the way down to what's going on in Gaza today, has nothing to do with religion. It's about the real God, money, power, and control. Our veterans saw this. The average everyday person in Afghanistan and Iraq, just like the people in Palestine, go about living their lives, gathering enough food for their families to eat. They do not care about Hamas, or they don't care about Taliban, or they don't care about the Israeli government. To a lot of vets, it's those innocent and simple faces we saw and fought for. Even though many of them had very little, they often offered us food and water, knowing that there would be nothing left for themselves to eat. When you watch what is happening in Gaza, yes, hate Hamas and other forms of terrorism. Even what's going on in our own country with January 6th and all these militias that are popping up. Hate what's going on in Russia is doing, but also remember that that doesn't give a country like Israel the right to genocide everybody without any prejudice. We, meaning the United States, were very, very careful in isolating our targets and went to great effort to minimize civilian involvement. I ask you, the viewer, to also realize this and politely request Israeli forces to do similar, because I fear that if they do not, something worse will grow from the ashes of destroyed hospitals and schools and the dried innocent blood spilled. And also, we need to understand that the same things, what makes a Hamas, what makes a Taliban, is also what's happening in January 6th. The variables may be different, but the equation is the same. Now, let's go back to our story. So, going back to our story, I mentioned how the unit of Stalker, Sneak Peek, and Dusty are pinned down. One of the alley vipers instructs another alley viper and a frag viper to go around and try to outflank our Joes who are pinned down. And because they're pinned down, they might as well use the time to fuel up and get some food into themselves. They kind of reminisce and talk about having a real meal in the past. Meanwhile, we see how Hawk has to deal with the idiot Sheik, whose just only concern is his oil reserves. And guarding the oil reserves is Battle Force 2000, which, again, unwisely are not even concerned that Cobra would launch an attack and destroy the oil reserves. In another separate unit, we have Rock and Roll, Tunnel Rat, and Muskrat coming from beneath the sewers to try to help our pinned down Joes. One of the frag vipers kind of uses this little innocent civilian boy as bait, which draws out Sneak Peek. And now, as soon as Sneak Peek pushes away the little boy, one of the range vipers makes his appearance known and guns down Sneak Peek. Not knowing if he's alive or dead, Dusty kind of replays a promise that he made to Sneak Peek's mom, and this is really bothering him. You could tell he's getting emotion. Stalker is telling him, "Hey, you cannot run out there, otherwise there's going to be two dead Joes instead of one." So they kind of wait until reinforcements arrive. Meanwhile, we see the dick ass Sheik calling Cobra Commander to make an agreement, telling him exactly the position of Battle Force. So Cobra Commander cannot pass up this opportunity and launches a missile attack on the position of Battle Force 2000, and they are blown up instantly. Finally, we see Roadblock and his unit finally make their way to Stalker and his unit and provide the much needed reinforcements. You could see these guys are getting psyched up. They're psyching themselves up. They're going to go and get their comrade out one way or another. And you could see they launch a full attack against outnumbered. They just go in there, guns blazing, to um, extract Sneak Peek. Sorry, I'm getting emotional with this. So going back for a second, while Sneak Peek was lying there, we saw him make a noise and we assumed that he's still alive. So Dusty finally reaches Sneak Peek, puts him over his shoulder, and tries to bring him to safety. And we see that the Joes are in heavy fire to try to get him out. Now, once they've made it back safely, Stalker points out that Sneak Peek is no more. So Dusty's been carrying his dead comrade. And then at the end, we see that stupid ass Sheik calling, after all the loss of life, the loss of resources, reach out to Cobra Commander to come to some agreement. So all of that for fucking nothing. So the Range Viper was released in 1990, and it was given the prototype names of Bush Viper, Badger, Snake Eater, Dingo were some of the names floated around, kind of like a Australian outbackish type of theme that was associated initially with this character. Also, this class year, 1990, had one of the most Vipers offered in that class. I mean, ironically, the Saw Viper was offered, as well as the Rock Viper and the Laser Viper. Information you will not get from these sudden G.I. Joe fans. The accessories included was the knife, the hose, grenade launcher, mortar, two-piece machine gun, and a backpack. Also, this is the year that, the 90s colors started to kick in, and still those gadgets of like spring-loaded weapons was not offered for this character. That would come on in 1991. Obviously, the prominent feature of this character is his glowing red eyes and his exposed cranium. Now, that just screams 90s craziness. The other thing is his variants. Now, there's five total, but I'm going to feature the two prominent ones, and this is going to be Range Viper version 2, which came out in 2005, as well as the GI Joe Club exclusive, which came out in 2015. And we all know that, well, real fans know that the GI Joe Club that it once was ceased to exist after 2018, which was really sad. Now, another crazy thing that about the Range Viper is that it was actually our good friend Pixel Dan's one of his first GI Joes, and he shared that on his Instagram. Um, Everybody knows Pixel Dan in our toy collecting community, so it's kind of cool to hear other people's like attachments to characters, so to speak. Alrighty, so I mentioned I don't know what wilderness the Range Viper is an expert in, but for my GI Joe counterparts, I'm gonna go for these guys. I think these would be the equivalent to him. Now, in that Deke animated series show, they had Ambush and Pathfinder and Salvo, but I definitely think Pathfinder would be, again, it depends what wilderness too, because the Everglades is different than the Rocky Mountains, obviously, but it's such a broad term. But I'm definitely going to stick with Pathfinder would be one, Muskrat would be the other, Rakonda would be the third, and believe it or not, I think Gung Ho would definitely be a good worthy adversary. And of course, above them all, because he's a fellow brownie, my man, Spirit. I think that would be my all-star to counter the Range Viper. What do you guys think? In the comments below, who would be your counter to the Range Viper? But I think this is a pretty solid lineup, and I don't care what wilderness you throw at me. This lineup is definitely going to stop any Range Viper from doing anything. Alrighty, so let's take a quick look at the packaging. I already showed it here and there during the course of the video, but let's take a more closer look at the box art in itself. And boy, I really like this. It goes back to issue number 43. It looks like it could be on a Megadeth cover, so I really like that. Even though I'm not too keen on it being a 1990s GI Joe character, I got to give credit where credit is due. And of course, when it comes to skull heads, the standard for me is one of my favorite Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider is the shiz, and if you watch my comic book unboxing, you'll know that I have Ghost Rider's second appearance, retelling of his origin story, which is Marvel Spotlight number 6, where Marvel Spotlight number 5 is his actual first appearance. But going back to this, again, I really like it. I think it's fucking awesome. So Gotta give credit where credit's due. Definitely love the box art for this. Alrighty, so now that we have everything all out, all the accessories, we are once again mirroring his version 1 1990 offering. Just like Big Ben. We have except this one has a backpack where Big Ben did not, but we have the action figure itself. I like the little axe, grenade launcher, his assault rifle, hand pistol, and then he has his magazine belt right there. And I think again, a good job of mirroring the 1990, but unlike the 1990, you have the axe as well, and two weapons, where the other one you only had one offering. And I'll show you that I like to position him with the grenade launcher over his automatic assault rifle because it's such a unique offering. I mean, I love this thing. This is one of the things I like because it reminds me of Terminator 2. You remember that scene where he's in Cyberdyne and he's like, going around using the tear gas on all the cops. So it's kind of mirroring that weapon, and I kind of like that. So we're going to set him up. All right, so here we have him all outfitted out. And again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Ian's Display Stands, the best figure stands for classified figures. You have the clear base as well as the black base, and we have featured them prominently on this channel here. But once again, even though I'm not a 90s kid and I don't like the weird sci-fi too much, I gotta give credit where credit's due. This is a fucking pretty cool figure. I mean, just to break up the monotony of classifieds, it's just a nice um, change of pace, so to speak. I think that's where this one accelerates. The other thing, like I said, I mentioned this with Firefly and Big Ben. There's been a noticeable difference with it just seems like it's a little bit loose. All of these new waves of these classified figures. And recently we saw the quarterly report of Hasbro's stocks decreasing. So, and I see all of these. I know this is a side note, but a lot of these people are like, oh, you need to buy everything. You do not need to buy everything. All right. They're a corporation. And the fact is, they should be mad at Disney and Lucasfilm for all the Star Wars. So that's the problem. So you do not need to buy everything. I didn't buy the His tank, and I didn't jump at the uh, vamp that was offered today. Um, it just these sudden GI Joe fans, like it's like, okay, great, but you don't need to like wave the banner of Hasbro. I know I'm going off here, but that's what's been flooded today, Thursday, after the Hasbro Pulse kind of like a live stream with the offering of the vamp. Just, you don't have to buy everything, and just because their stock is down, that's their damn fault. You don't need to buy everything. That's ridiculous. All these people are like, oh, you need to jump in and help them out. They don't give a fuck about you, so why should you give a fuck about them? But enjoy what you like, buy what you like, and you don't have to buy everything. And I'm actually glad I picked this. I picked this up by accident, to be honest with you. The backpack is pretty nice. I like that. You see all the shells in the back, so the detail is really nice on this backpack. I like the canister there. Um, I'm really impressed with this figure. I think it's a nice change of pace. His knife or his sai is kind of interesting. I forgot to show that in the accessories, but because I already had assembled him um, beforehand. You got the nice Cobra emblem. Again, this guy, like the Saw Viper, is responsible for killing a lot of GI Joes, and it is a reminder. That's how I look at it. Is that this is a reminder that war is not fun. That it's nothing to be glamorized or macho. War is scary. And I think, with the desensitizing of the news and everything, people forget that. It's not cool. So when I look at this figure, and that's the whole thing, like we have the Sunbow fans, and that's cool, but I think a lot of people, if when you read the comics, especially Larry Hama's comics, you understand that. That's why for me, the Larry Hama verse is significant. Let's put it that way. I know with the Skybound South Imaging presenting, a new twist on the tale. I mean, I'm glad that a real American hero is going on, like, at the same time. So we're going to have this Energon verse, and then the other thing is going to be a real American hero, the Larry Hama verse. So there's going to be two versions of G.I. Joe going on in the comic series. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, that's a look at the Saw Viper. I think this is pretty damn cool. Let's set him up with some of his contemporaries. And we're going to end the video with the Range Viper with his contemporaries. Again, we have the Alley Viper and him that were featured in that issue, G.I. Joe issue 113, that we just quickly recapped. And again, he looks, even though he is a weird sci-fi guy, he looks really good and right in there with the rest of his contemporaries. So that's nice. And once again, just pointing out the TGC Customs, we have the rifle that looks more accurate with the regular Viper. I think that's a good 6-inch version of his gun versus the offering that came with him. And then, of course, the AK-47 that I think I painted that one up and did that up. So I think that's pretty nicely done. Again, if you're looking to add weapons and accessories, check out TGC Customs like I did. I think you'll be very happy. Well, that's a look at the Range Viper. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something and kind of view this figure a little bit differently than from all of these other reviews and bandwagon G.I. Joe fans. I think it's important to understand what Larry Hama was trying to showcase and teach us um, about this, about war in itself. And I hope some of the things that I discuss, you take a minute and reflect on, because I think these things that we touch, I know it was a serious subject, but at the same time, um, you guys are adults, so you guys think about it, and hopefully you come to the same conclusions. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Hopefully we'll be going back into the comics. I know we've been doing action figures as of late with a little bit of comic mythos just to get us ready for when it's time to start covering the comics. This is Shabooru, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.